Hello, everybody, wherever you are tuning in to the Neoteran Herald Weekly, your weekly astrology guide coming to you on this 11th week of the 6th Regnum year in the Neoteran calendar. This is the 8th episode. We had 7 episodes towards the end of year 5 Regnum. In the area, we are resuming our podcasting, our weekly podcast with this limited edition and late edition, special edition of the Neoteran Herald Weekly. It's a brief episode, so we won't cover as much ground as we do with the main live program that goes out every day, or rather on Saturdays in the afternoon. Wait that in the coming Saturday, we're going to do that, and the publicity material wash out for it. But now, without much further ado, let me introduce myself. My name is Joroge Wahome Warugongo. I am the astrologer and the originator of the Neoteran Astrology. And today we are coming, as I said, this is the 8th episode, and we're going to look at the astrological highlights for week 11 of the Neoteran calendar. Of course, we're in the 3rd month of our calendar. We're going to look a little bit, or rather briefly, at the calendar, so don't worry too much if you're new to Neoteran astrology. If you're new, just sit back and try to have an open mind. We are not going to speak about very complicated things. We're going to talk about things that we see and experience every day. The sun, the moon, the passage of time, the darkness, the night, that is, and the light. Those are the sort of things that we immerse ourselves into. Now, the first thing we look at is usually the planetary junctions and motions. Very, very important to just point a few things, because there's slight difference from how we presented this kind of data last year. Is that when we presented this table with rows and columns, the columns are divided into, just as they are now, with a middle one separating the two blocks. The block to the left that is mainly shaded in blue, we used to call it the celestial alignments. But actually, after consideration, we are growing our lexicon. We understood that I'm using the word alignments is not very descriptive, and it's a bit misleading even, and therefore the best understanding is to use dimensions. We talk about dimensions, and this is not the episode in which to cover this, but I'm just going to point out that this table really describes what is the difference between the astrology and Neoteran astrology. If you know other astrology systems, the other astrological systems usually have, they use the tools for measuring and understanding time and doing their prognostications is what you call a horoscope. Now, horoscope is a two-dimensional perspective of the heavens. It gives you 2 dimensions to angular measures of every planetary body, and that is then extrapolated to give you different kinds of information. For us, that is not sufficient. We take 8 dimensions. 4 of them are celestial, 4 of them are terrestrial. But because that is not the objective of this podcast, if you have questions and you want to understand more what we mean by 8 dimensions and what we mean the 2 dimensions of traditional astrology, make your request in the comment section, and we will be able to respond to you in greater detail. The thing is, even if I go into that kind of distinction within the space we are allowed in this program, I'll not end up clearing the air. I'll most likely end up creating even more confusion in it. So just let it suffice for now that in Neoteran astrology we have 8, or rather even 9 dimensions, and the 8 or the 9 dimensions can be grouped into 2: the terrestrial, that is of the world, and celestial, that is of the heavens, and there are various implications of this. It's a whole philosophy behind it. When we present the order of the planets in this sense, that is not correct. Sorry, forgive me for that. I was trying to just zoom in. Is that we present these planets in their order of precedence, or if you like, importance. I'm trying to zoom in so that I can see the order in which the Sun, Mars, the Sun, the Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Uranus, Venus, and Saturn. And this is how we know them in the order in which they're used to naming the days. This is a feature, of course. It's not an innovation of Neoteran astrology. This is something that, of course, we have inherited from other systems of astrology. We still have plenty in common with other astrological systems, and that is something that really in Western astrological understanding is that on the naming of days. And then we have the 6 minor planets: Vesta, Ceres, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Aries. And then we have 3 what we call celestial planetary points. These are not lights, these are not luminaries, they're just points in the heavens that display planetary-like behavior. They shift relative to the stars and the underlying primordial grid of the celestial heavens. That is the anti-solar point, the lunar descending node, and the lunar ascending node. Again, I'll not go into much detail about them. This graphic, again, as usual, is going to be provided in our social media channels, and there'll be a link in the description of this video where you can access all that material together with other historical material that you've covered and provided in just this series and other kinds of teachings that we've done. And then it's a lot more useful to look at the celestial heavens, not just with respect to the precedence of the planets in their naming and their importance, but it's also important to understand how do they appear, which one is in which order. If I look at them at the whole sky, which one would I be able to see first? And this is the order in which they happen in the celestial heavens, beginning the one that is closest to the beginning point, the descending equinox point, Mercury in house 2, alongside with Venus. Then you get the Sun, Mars, planet Venus, Vistas rather, and then Pluto, the Moon, the ascending node, the lunar ascending node, planet Saturn, and I realize my pointer is not pointing at the right display screen that you people are seeing, but this is the order I'm talking about here. So we have the ascending node, the lunar ascending node, planet Saturn, planet Neptune, planet Ceres, planet Aries, planet Uranus, the anti-solar point. This is not a luminary, but again, another celestial planetary point. And lastly, we have Jupiter, and then the descending node of the Moon. The data is the very same thing that we had in the previous table. And down below, of course, you can find a key that shows the various abbreviations we have used and their meaning. We come to really the more understandable element of the celestial heavens. What do I mean by this? I mean the more intuitive, the easier to understand expression of the data that we just looked at. And this is if we projected the whole heavens as a flat plane, like a map of the globe, the very same way it is expressed and projected on your mapping app, the very same thing we've done with celestial heavens here. And therefore you see at the very center of that is a line that we call the equator. This is the celestial equator, and it is directly over the terrestrial equator itself. Okay, so if you see something like this planet here, which is planet Saturn here, very close to the equator, and all the others are in the south mainly, and a few to the north. It is the very same appearance. You know where the plane of the celestial equator lies. You'll see if you go out and look at the planets in the night, the ones that are visible, you'll see they'll be the very same pattern as they are shown here. I'll not dwell too much into this graphic, but as I mentioned, you could see the planetary order. In the planetary order, sorry, we've gone to the minor planets here. I just try to zoom. My screen is not very good for zooming in, so you'll have to have some bit of patience with me. And here we are talking about this planet Venus and Mercury. Here they are together because they're in conjunction. We have the Sun right at the division between house 2 and house 3. It's literally in house 3, but it's close enough to house 2 to have an influence with house 2. Again, that has various implications. Then right ahead of the Sun is planet Mars, and this also gives us another implication that maybe in a couple of weeks at most, we are going to have a conjunction of the Sun and planet Mars. We are going to give you short guidance into how to take advantage of that. Then here we have the Moon. The Moon actually, of course, is not here for the entire week. The other planets, more or less, they will be in the same position we've shown them to be in, but the Moon is there just for purposes of illustrating what is there at the middle of the week. So within a day, by Thursday, the Moon will have moved out of house Cabell, but because you're capturing the midpoint, that is its default location. Moving away from house Cabell, where we fight the Moon, is we fight that literally the second half, the southern celestial half, or rather the northern celestial half of the zodiacal sphere has very little activity because the only planet there is Jupiter. But it's interesting enough because Jupiter is in retrograde. But here we have not yet covered this. House number 6, this is something very, very important, a highlight of the week. Planet Saturn is at standstill. It's not just Saturn that is at standstill. We're going to see some more. We're going to explain this in the highlights, but that's very, very important. I just wanted you to notice that place at the place you're talking about that standstill happening, because at this point, house, or rather planet Saturn has come to a standstill there, and it's at a standstill where it is in house number 6 and far enough from Habis Elder to be outside the influence of Habis Elder. Okay. Other times, as it's been, we've been looking at it, this has not happened in almost a year, where planet Saturn was only influenced by the presence in Habis Elder, or rather in house 6. Worth noting. And that is about the main or the major planets on week 11 of year 6. If you have more questions about understanding this, because this can be very personal, the implications are not the same equally for everyone. So let's look at the minor planets. And the minor planets are the 6 minor planets alongside the 3 celestial points that are planetary in their behavior. We look to the beginning of the first crodicil. There is no activity of minor planets, but we do have here with us planet Vesta at the beginning or entry of house number 4. We have Pluto, pretty much has been at the entry of house Cabell for now over a year. And then here we have the lunar ascending node about the midway point in house number 6, and right span in the division between house 6 and Habizelda is planet it's Uranus, rather. Sorry, yes, it's Uranus. Is it Neptune? No, it's not Neptune. This is Uranus. No, it's Neptune, rather. It's Neptune. Uranus is here. Uranus is here also at standstill. And we have with us here the division between house Habizelda and house number 8, the planet Aries. Again, that's special. We've had an episode that just dealt with the planet Aries in the past. I don't remember the exact episode, but I can check that for you and provide that more information in the description. And therefore, I'm here to the very end of the, or rather even, of course, in house number 9 here, we do have the anti-solar point, just entering house 9, the very same way the sun was entering house 3. Remember, the anti-solar point does exactly opposite of what the sun does. That's right, anti-solar. And then finally, we have the lunar descending node right here in the exit of house number 12. So those are the graphics. The only thing we need to just, I'm going to present here is the lunar, the calendar for the year, for the month. That is the 3rd month. A Libran month began just about 5 days ago on Friday. And today, of course, we are talking about entering from date 5, Tuesday, to date 6, which is a Wednesday. And this is the 15th of the month, which is the lunisolar conjunction. Now, something that is going to be very, very important is that towards the end of the month, we not only have a conjunction on the 30th, but on 29th, we begin the week that is the standstill week for the sun. Of course, that is not a highlight for this week, but it's coming soon. So that is this month is going to be special because the standstill, even if the standstill that you're talking about in the 3rd month happens in the 4th month, that because the period is a whole week, it's going to start within month 3, but essentially to be in month 4, because the day of perfect standstill needs to be in month 4. And we'll be taking note of that as we go on. Let's now look at the highlights themselves. What are the highlights this year? There are 3, or rather this week, there are 3 planets at planetary standstill at the exit of Neoteran Celestial House 6 and the entry of Habizelda, that is Neoteran House number 7, and the 3 are planet Saturn, minor planet Ceres, and a minor planet Uranus. Neptune is not at standstill, it should be still in retrograde. Now, there's something very important. Mercury and Venus are getting to conjunction in house number 2, and this happens on this very Wednesday. And then finally, and also we have a transition, a transit, solar transit. Again, the use of word transit is a little bit different from how other astrological systems use that term. They just means that the sun is going to move into house 3. It did this on Monday of this week. Then last week we have the transit of Mars. It is going to transit through the middle point of house number 3. Normally, a midpoint or a midway transit is not usually something to call highlight, but house 3 is unique because it has 2 holes. So by transiting through the midpoint, planet Mars will not be changing its celestial house, but it will be changing its host. It will move from being hosted by Scorpio and being hosted by Ophiuchus, which occupies much of house 3 and Saturn dominates the exit. We're introducing a brand new section to the Neoteran Herald Weekly for this week, and we're going to call it What's Going On in the Heavens? What's going on in the heavens this week? And this week we have an interesting phenomenon, but I want to teach you how to see it for yourself without first of all telling you what it is. And what I'm going to require you to do is that early in the morning, wake up at a time like now, but actually it doesn't have to be exactly at this time, but this time is safe for people who are on the equator, around the equator, but even further on, 5:35 a.m. is pretty good time. Or if not so, mark about 40 to 30, between half an hour and 40 minutes before the sun rises. So just ensure your local time for the sunrise and give yourself about 40 minutes. And that will give you a window of about 10 to 20 minutes in which you can observe the phenomenon that I'm trying to talk about. Because after the sun has risen, the sun will drown out all the interesting things that you can observe. Now, this one can be observed anywhere in the world, but some of the indicators, the pointers that you can see may not be visible. If you are near the equator, and you're in a place, or rather you're in a place that you can see this most famous constellation, the Big Dipper for Americans. For Europeans is Plough, and some of us in Africa, that is how we are introduced to it. But for people who are on the equator, I know Americans and Europeans, you'll say this is not how you see it, because normally the Big Dipper looks the other way, upside down, like these two stars are top and these smaller ones are there. So it's usually the other way around. But for us, near the south of this constellation, this is how we see it. So people near the equator and all the way to the South Pole, this is how they would see it. And that means majority of us, this is the site you'll be seeing. Now, I don't want to look too much deeper and don't waste too much time, because time as it is going, if I actually start moving the clock I had posted, is it moving? It's not moving. Still post. Yes, the time is moving. This phenomenon will happen. Of course, you'll not go at normal time. You're going to move a little bit quickly. But before we move on, let's mark a star, the last star. This is the one I want you to find. If you're sufficiently north or close enough to the equator, you'll be able to see Alkaid, the last of the stars, the southernmost star, or easternmost. It's very close to the east, more close to the east than the north. It's called Alkaid. It's a bluish star. Then I want you to follow it all the way near the east, and you'll see another famous star, which we call Arcturus. Arcturus is more, compared to Alkaid, is more white yellowish than blue. This is more bluish than white. Both of them are white, but this has a tinge of blue, and Arcturus has a tinge of yellow to it. Then when you move forward, this one you'll be able to see. You should be able to see it really wherever you are. Even those people who are too far to the south, unless you're really at the, maybe, perhaps even if you're at the Arctic Circle, Antarctic Circle rather, you should be able to see Arcturus. And then move along, and you'll be able to see another star here called Spica, more blue, a little bit high in the sky. And that is where I want you to train your sight on. So, beginning with Alkaid, Move closer to the east, Arcturus. Even more further beyond the east, to the east, you'll see Spica. So after you mark Spica, I want you to move now and train your eyes on the horizon. The horizon started becoming brighter as the sun, the glow of the sun begins to show. And as the time moves closer and closer to sunrise, you see something interesting happening. So for those who are at the equator around 5:45, you'll see another star having risen, so that now Arcturus, Spica, and this new star form something of a triangle, almost an equilateral triangle. And this is a sight you'll be able to enjoy for at least 10 minutes. But I want to, what is this star? Turns out it's not actually a star. It's a planet. It's planet Venus, the morning star. And right next to it, right above it, there is Mercury. And this is the conjunction we're talking about in the main section of this video. And you'll be able to see it. And Mercury will be very faint. Venus will be quite sufficiently bright, but it's closer and closer to the sun. And that is a constellation. That is the phenomenon we are talking about. You could have observed this on Tuesday morning, but I fear on Tuesday morning, Venus and Mercury were close to each other and too close to the sun for Mercury really to become distinct, especially for people observing it across the city. So still Wednesday is the best time to observe this conjunction. But Thursday, the conjunction will have been broken because Venus will be sufficiently removed from where Mercury is. And if you are to use binoculars or telescopes, you'll see these two resolving, and you'll see Mercury is actually a crescent while Venus is a fully lit disk. You may wonder if they're in the same position in the sky relative to the sun, why is it one is a crescent, the other one is full disk? This happens because of the relative positioning between ourselves, the sun, and these planets. From the Earth, we get Mercury is closest to us now, and the sun is between. So we move from the Earth. If we're traveling with a spaceship, we'd first of all be able to meet Mercury. Then we'll go to the sun, whatever the sun is, and then the other side that is where you find Venus. And Venus, because it's opposite the sun, it's reflecting all the sun rays, and that's why you can see its disk is fully lit. Somebody on Venus would also see Mercury as a fully lit disk, and they are moving in opposite directions. Venus is still approaching the sun. That's why we see it's in prograde, infrasolar prograde, but Mercury is infrasolar retrograde phase of its creative, or what you call the synodic cycle. And that is the interesting phenomenon. And you can observe this not just on Wednesday morning, on Thursday morning. Mercury is so clear, it will be a little bit brighter and it will rise a little bit earlier. The same thing for about 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks, you'll be able to see this phenomenon well into the first week of December. You'll be able to see that. Of course, for us, we're still talking about month 3. And by that time, Venus will have moved too close to the sun. You'll not be able to see it, but you'll be able to see Mercury in the mornings, a sufficiently bright star. You'll be able to see it right next, and you can still trace it with Spica and Arcturus. I plan to be observing it nearly every morning, and those of us who can join me, I'll try to see if we can join. People can wake up that early. We can have that just an observational phenomenon, not really in any form a ritualistic entity. It's just communing with the planets as they are. Thank you so much for listening in. That has been the Neoteran Herald Weekly for week 11 of year 6 Errorenium. I'm your personal astrologer, Joragwa Homewarogogo, signing off. Shalom. Have a week of blessing and creative consequence. Thank you. See you on Saturday.